Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
Welcome, everyone, to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, the only daily conservative radio show / podcast that covers specifically Kentucky politics and news. A lot of people pay a whole lot of attention to that national news, and hey, I get it. I understand it's easy to take in. You've got 24/7 channels that cover national politics, no matter your cut or jib, conservative or liberal. You can catch that news there, but what about what's going on right in your own backyard? What about those things that you can make a difference on? What about those things happening in your state? Well, here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, that's what we cover. Things you can make a difference about, things you need to stay informed about. So please make sure not only are you listening to this show every day, but you're telling others about it, telling them about the Andrew Cooperrider Show. It comes out every day. You can reach out to the show by email at info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Remember, every show is broadcasted Monday through Friday on WZXI at 9 a.m. and then is available on all major podcasting platforms as well as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble at 1 p.m. Monday through Friday. First, I want to start out by saying I hope everyone had a successful opening weekend for deer season. I was able to spend a day hunting out in Wolfe County as well as a day hunting in Garrett. I was able to fill one of my doe tags, but haven't quite seen that 30-point buck that I'd love to see, love to take down this year. I do want to take a moment, though, to remind all my fellow sportsmen, please be safe out there. We had an unfortunate accident happen opening day in Garrett County where an older gentleman accidentally discharged his weapon and fatally struck him out in the woods. And first, my condolences to his family. That's absolutely awful. Please, hunters, be safe, okay? Wear your orange. Try to make sure someone knows where you are as you're out there. And if you have the ability to, if you've got the service or radios or whatever, please make sure you are checking in with them throughout the day. Make sure nothing happened to you. Also, I want to give a shout out here to Brandon Wides, absolutely bagging this monster 9-point buck. Huge deer. Brandon Wides out of Jessamine County. He ran for school board in 2022. I don't know if he's going to run for school board again in Jessamine County, but when or if he does, he's going to have my support. I mean, a man that can bag this kind of deer certainly deserves to have whatever position he wants in government. But no, seriously, that's a horrible way to pick who you should vote for. But Brandon Wides is a fantastic conservative, a good man, would make a great school board member. Sorry he lost in 2022. Hopes he runs again. But man, that's a monster deer right there. Speaking of school systems, and speaking about school board races, it's more important than ever here in Kentucky. We're paying attention to what's going on in our school boards. Now, many of you live in rural areas, maybe conservative areas, and you think to yourself, I don't got to worry about that happening. This is Kentucky. This is a Republican state. I don't got to worry about that happening in my county. We're a small county, a rural county. We're red as red can be. We don't have to worry about it. Let me tell you, Anderson County, where Republicans are a majority. They have a majority registration there. It's a ruby red county, has certainly shown over the past year that paying attention to what's going on in your schools and your local government, becomes incredibly important. It's not important to just vote for Republicans or vote for conservatives, but to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, some of you may remember a story from a few months ago where I talked about a librarian there at the Anderson Public Library. And it was a Kentucky Lantern article where a writer from the Kentucky Lantern was interviewing that librarian there. And she was talking about how she just had absolutely flabbergasted that this conservative community would give her pushback when she was displaying inappropriate LGBTQ books, children's books, those types of things, spending those types, the people of Anderson County's tax dollars on those items, absolutely out of control. And she was just flabbergasted about it. Or maybe you may remember from, within the past year, Randy Adams, who's a pastor at Ballard Baptist Church. You may remember he is or was a principal at Anderson County's alternative school who was suspended because the school there wanted Randy Adams to hide from parents if students started going by different pronouns, transitioning at school, so on and so forth. They basically wanted Randy Adams to lie to parents as principal. And he said, look, I can't do that. Not only one, am I a Christian and I don't subscribe to those things, but two, I can't hide from parents what's going on. I'm not going to forward and encourage people to live a lie and also to lie to their parents. I'm not going to do that. It doesn't coincide with me. And he was suspended for that. So you've got a librarian there, clearly pushing forward a liberal agenda. You've got a principal being suspended because he didn't want to hide from parents if their child was transitioning at school. And now you have a gentleman by the name of Brad Briscoe, who's filed lawsuit against Gerald Hankins. I believe that's how you say her name. I don't know exactly. Doesn't matter. Who is the guidance counselor at the high school there in Anderson County, as well as Superintendent Sheila Mitchell, over a situation regarding Briscoe's daughter. Funny enough, this story came to light when Randy Adams, once again the pastor at Ballard Baptist, asked Brad Briscoe to give testimony at his church. Now, what Brad had to say, obviously, a lot of this is unproven, not unproven, but is allegations, of course. And I do want to put a disclaimer on this, that these are allegations. Now, this, much like the Raceland Worthington situation, I'm bringing it up even though it is allegations because there's an awful lot of proof here. First, you do have a lawsuit with affidavits signed, which is obviously, that is a testimony in court. Additionally, as well, we have accompanying screenshots, apparently hundreds of screenshots and phone records that go addition to this. And as well, you have a number of things. And so what was happening is the Anderson County Public Schools there, the guidance counselor, Gerald Hanks, is accused of engaging in some inappropriate, not relations in a sexual matter per se, but inappropriate kind of coaching, I guess you'd call it indoctrination, communication with the Briscoe's daughter. When a situation came out where the Brad Briscoe, the father, found out, and the mother, of course, found out that their daughter was seeing another girl. And it really reared its ugly head. See, it started out with, this girl coming over to the house, seeing the Briscoe's daughter, and they didn't think anything of it. They thought it was a normal, their daughter's 16, normal friend or what have you. Well, because they then find out 6 months or so later after the relations began that their daughter was actually engaged in a type of relationship with this other girl, and they punished her for it. They didn't punish her for being gay, according to Brad. What they punished her for is the same thing that anybody would do if you had a child, if your child was straight and was spending the night at the opposite sex house, engaging in relations at the opposite sex's house. You certainly shouldn't be happy about it. You shouldn't be letting your 16-year-old boys or girls spend the night with their boyfriends or girlfriends. And so in this situation, that was the same type of conversation. So they punished her for it, but that's when things took a turn. And we'll have more on how the school injected itself into this situation after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for conservative news and politics that's happening right here in Kentucky. We'll have the rest of the Briscoe story here in this next segment. We'll see you all soon. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics from a conservative standpoint. Before the break, I was talking about Anderson County, Ruby Red County, and its litany of issues it's had with liberals taking over and liberal ideologies taking over their schools, taking over their libraries, and the most recent incident involving Brad Briscoe. Brad Briscoe's daughter was seeing another girl secretly and was hiding that from the parents. And so she was punished, not once again for being gay, but was punished because she was engaging in a relationship and not telling the parents about it and spending the night over at that house. As I said, very reasonable thing. If your kid, opposite sex, straight kids, like I said, boyfriend, girlfriend, spend the night at each other's house, 16, you'd be upset at them too. So they punish the daughter for that. They don't punish her for engaging in a same-sex relationship. And then they tell the daughter quite clearly, look, we are a Christian household. These are not the type of relationships we condone. We love you regardless. Once you turn 18, we can have those conversations if you really want to, or what have you, about that type of same-sex relations. But until then, this is our home, and you will not be dating somebody of the same sex. Now, it's perfectly reasonable. Once again, somebody under 18, parents can make rules saying you're not allowed to date. That is a reasonable rule to make. That doesn't involve, you may look at them as prude or disagree with that decision, but that is a decision. Friends of mine that have children that are older make those kinds of decisions all the time. When they can date, how they can date, who they can date. If they don't like their child dating a certain person, they have the right to say, look, you're not going to date them as far as that goes. But apparently this was too much to handle for Anderson County Public Schools, specifically the guidance counselor in this case, Geraldine, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but guidance counselor Hanks. So guidance counselor Hanks, without, of course, notifying the parents, pulls their daughter out of class one day and sits her down and proceeds, apparently, supposedly, reportedly, according to Brad Briscoe, this is his testimony, that the guidance counselor proceeds to tell the daughter that her parents don't love her, that she can't believe they punished her for being gay, even though, once again, she was punished for lying about a relationship, staying the night with somebody she was engaged in a romantic relationship with. Reasonable stuff. But tells her, hey, they don't love you. Because apparently, according to the current liberal thought process, if you tell your straight 16-year-old daughter, hey, you can't spend the night at a boy's house, that's acceptable. But if you tell your maybe gay 16-year-old daughter, hey, you can't spend the night at a girl's house, that is now, that's extreme. We have to throw all standards out the window the minute the child might hint at being LGBTQ. Now, I say hint at it, and I'm using kind of words like that because according to Brad Briscoe, he said that his daughter has said, she's confused. She doesn't know what she is. She doesn't know what's going on. She's just a 16-year-old girl going through parts of life. I mean, and of course, this gets shoved down their throat left and right, this LGBTQ craziness. Instead of just, letting kids be kids, they shove these types of things down their throat. They indoctrinate them left or right. Clearly, Anderson County Public Schools has a viewpoint on this because from their superintendents and guidance counselor reported behavior in this and their prior behavior with Randy Adams and his suspension there, it's clear they have a viewpoint on this that they want to enforce. So they pull her out, and this guidance counselor proceeds, without telling the parents, to talk to their daughter about emancipation or breaking off from being, the dependent from her parents, and even proceeds to facilitate the daughter talking to a lawyer to see about the emancipation. According to Brad, the guidance counselor did the work of getting the lawyer and the daughter together. And the lawyer tells them, look, I can't do anything for you. You can't be emancipated because your parents are Christian, at which point the guidance counselor reportedly then decides to launch a different type of attack and tells the daughter to make sure she picks as many arguments as she can with the father and mother, the Briscoes' parents, and record them and videotape them. And she does that. She does extreme things like painting on walls, those types of things, and begins and records and has hours of footage and recordings of her parents and her having these types of discussions. Apparently nothing out of the craziness, nothing nothing crazy like beatings or anything going on the recordings. But she proceeds to push her like that and then turn over that evidence to hers and to CPS. This is what, once again, Brad Briscoe says happened. So lawyer didn't work. So the counselor coaches her on using CPS and then tells her that, hey, don't worry. When they get taken away from you, you can come live with me. I've got my basement all set up with you. So you already have a guidance counselor, reportedly, coaching a little girl, a 16-year-old girl, on how to come out from under the thumb of her parents. So then the guidance counselor can have her come live in her basement. If we didn't have the LGBTQ thrown in there, everybody and their mother would say this is already crossed an extremely, extremely far line. Extremely far line. Now, some people ask themselves, why did the daughter go along with this? Why did she keep going? Well, Briscoe here, the father, Brad Briscoe admits that he was dumb. He trusted the schools, and he actually told her to talk to her counselor. So the counselor pulls her out without, of course, informing the parents and without the daughter's prompting. But she continues to go because the father pushed her to do it because he thought, talk to somebody, that's the right thing to do. It's a small town. He knows the counselors. He thought he could trust them. Well, he realized he couldn't anymore when CPS pays them a visit and sits down with them for hours and accuses them and says they're going to be charged with all these crimes. And then after that, a video of the father and mother engaging in a conversation with the daughter after she did one of her crazy stunts to get a rise out of them is released publicly. And the daughter says she didn't release it. And if the daughter didn't release it, well, the only people who had recordings of were CPS and the guidance counselor. So now we have the potential that the guidance counselor here isn't just introducing to lawyers, isn't just telling the daughter to set up a CPS case, but now is releasing these things out into the public. Well, through the charges coming down from CPS, they're required to fill out paperwork. And some of the paperwork says, hey, is somebody are you seeing anybody? Are you seeing any kind of therapist, counselor, those kinds of things that deal with the issues? And the daughter says, yeah, I've been seeing the school counselor. And so the parents are like, great, you've been talking to somebody. Let's set up a meeting. Let's talk to them. Well, when they said that, the daughter apparently texted the school counselor saying, hey, they know about us meeting together. I just want to let you know so you don't get blindsided by it or anything else. And the guidance counselor responds, apparently, and this is according to screenshots, that Briscoe's wife, that she will, if they keep pushing or coming at her, that Briscoe's wife, she'll try to get her fired. And Briscoe's wife apparently is a teacher in Anderson County Public Schools. And so the guidance counselor responds to the daughter saying, well, I'll get your mom fired if they keep pushing at me. I got you. Don't worry about it. I love you, everything else. In that moment, the daughter says that's when she realized, oh, this person cares more about her cause than she does me. That's all she cares about. This is about indoctrination. This is not about actual care for me. And that's when the parents find out about it. And what the parents go through and discover once they know that there's been these communications, they find out there's been hundreds of text messages, calls, outside of school hours, hundreds of text messages outside of school hours. Okay. Private contact without telling the parents, already out of control. They find out the daughter's been being pulled out of class darn near every day. They say there's 2 full days where the daughter was signed out of school and it's unaccounted for. Somebody signed her out of school and it's unaccounted for. And then on top of that, the daughter, when she's being pulled out of the class, she's being pulled up to the guidance counselor's office. Guess who she's spending time with there? the girl that the parents said, look, you're not allowed to see this girl anymore. You're not allowed to date you're not allowed to date anymore. You can't see this girl. You're not allowed to date. You lied to us about dating. You're not allowed to date. And then the guidance counselor, against the parents' wishes, pulls in the girl so they can see each other on school times. Completely going against the parents, knowingly going against the parents because the daughter has told her this. And they discover all these things that's been going on. So immediately they ask the superintendent to investigate. Well, the superintendent, in this case, Sheila Mitchell, well, the daughter says, Dad, she's in on it. The father goes, no way. I just asked her to investigate. Oh, by the way, that investigation came back that the guidance counselor was acting in good faith. He says, I've known this guy, the superintendent forever. You mean tell me she's in on it? Daughter says, yeah. Well, apparently they sit down with the superintendent. The daughter calls out the superintendent at the meeting and says, you've known about this. And the superintendent says, yeah. Cops to it says, yeah, I have known about this. I have known about this. I mean, you've got inappropriate messages, calls. The guidance counselor saying, I love you, love back and forth. It's dozens of times over and over in these messages, all without the parents' knowledge. It's completely out of control. And remember, this isn't a one-off for Anderson County either. Okay. We're going to finish this up after this break. We got a few more stories to cover too today as well. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics and news from a constitutional and conservative perspective. We'll be back after this short break to finish up the Briscoe story. I've got some other interesting stories too as well about a survey done for the NFL. It's just a comment on that. As well as, is Mitch McConnell going to hang in there? We'll have all that after this break. We'll see you here very shortly. And you are back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics and news from a constitutional and conservative perspective. I was finishing up the Briscoe story of a family that has come under attack for their Christian beliefs from the Anderson County Public Schools, reportedly involving CPS investigations and everything else in regards to their daughter and an inappropriate relationships going on. So as I covered, the counselor was engaging in hundreds of texts, dozens of calls outside of school hours, not telling the parents, having these communications, signing the kid out of class, not telling the parents, daughter's checked out for school, not telling the parents, having the daughter be able to hang out with the very girl that the parents said you can't see in the office, absolutely attacking any kind of semblance of parental rights. And also to prioritizing. I mean, this should be a time where you're getting the girl ready for college. This is a 16-year-old girl, preparing her for that transition there. And instead, you're pulling her out of class for hours on end every day to talk to her about indoctrinating her into this LGBTQ cult of beliefs. And it's absolutely ridiculous and out of control. And if this was a one-off, I wouldn't be castigating the Anderson County Public Schools as Christian haters. But if this is true, if the story is true, like I said, this is reported. We've got the text, we've got the screenshots, we've got sworn testimony, we've got lawsuits, all things that point to this could be very well true. So if this is all true, coupled with the suspension of a principal over refusing to not inform parents, coupled with the librarian situation too, that's a different system, obviously, but couple those things together, I can sit here and say, if those things are true, if this latest story is true, Anderson County Schools has a giant Christian-hating problem. And every single member of that community needs to say enough is enough. Superintendent needs to be gone if this is true. The counselor needs to be gone if this is true. And some policies got to be put in place. You know, I covered that Raceland Worthington story maybe last week or so involving a teacher grooming or reportedly grooming girls and communicating with them outside of school hours. There is absolutely no reason any teacher or counselor or anybody needs to be communicating with students, underage students, at all. Outside of school hours, they certainly don't need to be privately texting them, and they certainly don't need to be calling them outside of school hours. If you have anything to say to that child, it needs to be done through messaging that involves the parents. I don't care if you're a coach. There are plenty of things like Team Snap and other apps out there where you can communicate things that need to be told directly to them that get copied into the parents so the parents can see what's being said and told. There is no reason for communication. Every single public school in the state, every public school system needs to adopt this policy right now. You don't live in Anderson County schools? Well, it's time for you to step up. Go to your next school board meeting. Go to your next school board meeting and demand to hear what policy they have on teachers and counselors and coaches contacting minors on their private phones, cell phones, calling outside of school hours or having any contact with them at all, because it should be banned in every single public school. Every single school should be banned, period. There are too many technological solutions here to have this communication. That's the first thing. The other thing that needs to happen, of course, is that we need to see a culture change. We should be focused on teaching, not indoctrination. We should see there being a law passed by our legislature. So I talked about what the school boards need to do. Making it clear, you're not to be communicating with students privately at all, ever. Parents need to know about all your communications, period. Period. And for those of you out there that say, well, what if the parents are doing this or that or doing this or that? If you find that out, if there's a reason not to communicate to the parents, CPS better be alerted right away. There better be criminal reasons to do that right away. Not after 6 weeks or 2 months, but right away, right in that moment. Nothing needs to be developed beyond that. If you need to have 2 months of conversations before you can do that, you're wrong. You're doing the wrong thing. And then on top of that, we need to have a law against weaponizing CPS. This isn't just school systems. This is also done, obviously, it's done in custody battles. It's done by nosy neighbors. And by nosy neighbors, I mean, they're really not nosy, but they just don't like what you're doing. Because as we're coming into a time where we're seeing people with traditional conservative ideas, seeing Christians with traditional Christian beliefs coming under attack by their government, we need to see those who report that they have the same beliefs as us. Our massive majority, we have legislators up there in Frankfurt saying, no. You're not going to weaponize their own dollars against them. You're not going to take their tax money and use it to fund your Gestapo tactics here. Filing intimidation and going after people through CPS to intimidate them because you just simply don't agree with their belief systems. Not that it's abuse, you just don't agree with them. No. That's not going to happen here in Kentucky. We need to be seeing that. So go to your local school boards, demand a policy on teachers communicating with students. 2, go to your state legislator and demand a law be passed about weaponizing CPS in this way, especially if you're a government actor. Well, I had a few other stories I want to cover today too as well. Here's a little one, okay? And I know this seems so small and stupid, but I just think... It's just really bothered me. Okay. So there was a survey done by the American Survey, which was powered by What If Media Group, about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. They surveyed 16,000 random Americans, and 89.3% of them said they want to see less Taylor Swift in their football coverage. Now, not only is it funny that we've arrived at a point where somebody commissioned a poll of 16,000 people to do to find out whether or not they want more Taylor Swift in their NFL coverage, but also that's a expensive and large poll. You know, when we look at political polls, they're typically less than 1,000. I mean, the largest Republican primary poll was 3,800 in the last month and a half or so. And that's in the Republican primary. There's been 14 Republican primary polls conducted since October, and only 4 of them have over 1,000 people that they surveyed. And keep in mind, smaller sample sizes mean greater opportunity for margin of error. Out of the 25 most recent presidential approval rating polls, how is Joe Biden doing? Only two, have polled more than 2,500 respondents. That's for presidential approval rating. What's this mean? I think this really points to what our values are as a culture. We spend more money and more time wondering about how much Taylor Swift do NFL fans want to see than we do on, hey, how are these people that are destroying our lives doing? What do you think of them? Who would you vote for? That literally have control over in our monetary supply in a way, or at least monetary policy, of course, Federal Reserve, private, ban it, whatever. Anyways, monetary policy, people that have control over whether or not we end up in a war, okay? Foreign relations, right? That have control over $6.7 trillion, right? 6.7 trillion, that's what our yearly budget is, our money, 6.7 trillion of our money, whether we have it now or don't, or we're borrowing it from our kids, but 6.7 trillion in tax dollars taken from us. Yet we care more about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and how much do you want to see in the NFL than we do about the people that literally are stealing from you, overspending, destroying your lives. What do you think about them? Less important on the ratings of importance. That's much lower. That's down here. And whether or not we want to see Taylor Swift in NFL, well, that is up there. Coming up after this, we're going to be going over closing of 2 power plants day after election approved by state board. And then finally, does Mitch hang in there? We're going to have that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics and news from a constitutional and conservative perspective. We'll see you all back here in just a short bit. And you are back in this final segment with the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics and news from a constitutional and conservative perspective. 2 power plants, coal power plants, were approved for closure the day after the governor's election. Now, you may remember this coming up in the debates, came up in lieutenant governor's debates, came up in the governor's debate about this closure of these 2 coal power plants. So LG&E and KU were looking to close 2 of their coal-fired power plants and replace them instead with solar and natural gas. And so they went to the Commission on Power Plants to ask permission to shut those down. Now, government has control over this because, well, government has enforced, in a way, a monopoly on power. And you know this, if you live somewhere, you don't have another power company to choose from. And the reason why this happened is because back in the day, the power companies, government entered into contracts with power companies, and power companies strung up the wires to put everybody on the grid. But, you don't have to pay for that. The power companies pay for that. But in return, they wanted to say, if we're going to spend this money stringing up these utility lines, 1, we want to be the only ones you allowed to do it. And then 2, we want to have a monopoly on that. That is why, take for example, in this area here, if you live in Lexington, you have 3 choices, but most people have 2 choices for internet in this state: Spectrum and was it Windstream or I think Windstream or whatever it's called. And the reason why is because Spectrum is delivered through cable lines, and the cable company was the one who strung those up and paid for that. And so therefore they have monopoly on those lines. And then the other is the telephone line, which is how the other provider delivers their broadband. And of course, that was because the telephone company was the one who strung those lines. Now they have a monopoly on that, and nobody else is allowed to string the lines. Now in Lexington, you now have MetroNet, which is fiber, and they ran their own fiber lines in order to set that up and enter into agreements with the city. Much the same thing happened with power. So therefore they have this monopoly, and so they have to ask permission to do certain things. Now, obviously, protecting coal-fired plants in Kentucky, some people agree with, disagree with. You can say it's bad for the environment to fire up coal, but other people would say, look, the damage we're doing to our environment through our coal-fired plants compared to the rest of the damage everybody else is doing is minimal. On top of that, the cost in power is very, very expensive otherwise, or is expensive. And having these coal-fired plants provides cheap sources of power for Kentuckians and keeps Kentuckians' utility bills low. And, as proof of this, we can just look at Kentucky's utility bills. Kentucky has the 17th lowest price of electricity in the nation. Is fully almost 25% less than the national average. But just look at the highest places, the places in the continental U.S. that has the highest cost of energy is Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and California. And you know what all three of those have in common? One of their largest sources of power for all three, the biggest by share source, is natural gas, followed up by renewables, quote unquote renewables, biomass, wind, solar, some hydro, but really they don't use like any coal. They make no electricity from coal. Three most expensive. Now let's go to the three cheapest. Idaho is the cheapest. And Idaho is so cheap because they use hydro electricity. And, you can't really compete with that. There's literally like no cost. Once you build the hydro dams and stuff, and it kind of runs through outside of maintenance of it, you don't have an input cost to spin the turbines like you do. Like with coal, you got to pay for coal, or natural gas, you got to pay for natural gas. So obviously that's there. But after that comes Montana, the second lowest. Coal is their number one source of energy, massive number one source. And then Utah, guess what? Coal. Actually, if you look at the states with the cheapest power, what you see is predominantly almost 100% of them, other than like Idaho, is coal. If it's not hydro, it's coal. If you don't have hydropower, it's coal that's keeping your prices down. While natural gas and renewables is what's driving the prices up. And so KU and LG&E want to replace the coal-fired power plants with natural gas and solar, something that the most expensive states in the nation have. And so they were asking for permission from the utilities board. They held off on doing it. Why? Because it was political. Because if they released the closure announcement, they waited till the day after the election. If they released it before the election, well, then you would be sitting there saying, wow, Beshear's administration over here advocating for getting done raising the cost of our electricity over this idea of this liberal idea that, well, global warming is going to end the world. Chicken Little, the sky's falling. Forget all the times they've gotten it wrong. In fact, if you may remember, I wasn't alive then, but back in the day, it used to be the biggest concern, 70s and 80s, was the world cooling too much, it was going to get too cold, if you remember. And now it's, global warming, sky's falling. We got it right this time. So let's go ahead and make you all pay double, triple your electricity bills because, we want you to fund us advancing into these new power sources that will be more expensive, not because we don't have plenty of coal, not because it doesn't support the Kentucky economy, coal economy, but because also, it's the liberal agenda. We got to do it. We want to get those tax incentives from old Uncle Joe Biden. We want them incentives. So we're going to go ahead and make you all pay more for electricity because, we can. We have a monopoly and your governor sold you out. So deal with it. To announce this the day after, they don't even wait like a month. They insult our intelligence by doing this the day after the election. Insult our intelligence. Now, obviously, with the governor's election complete, some people have asked about Mitch McConnell. Is Mitch McConnell, is he going to retire? Is he going to step down? Is he going to wait till after the midterms? What's going to happen here? Now, as a reminder, Mitch McConnell has till 2026 for this term to be up, with Amy Beshear winning. Now, keep in mind, there is a state law that says Amy Beshear has to replace McConnell with a Republican, though it is unclear on if that'll handle and stand up to constitutional muster. The law is new. It's never been come into effect before. And so it will be left up to the courts if Mitch McConnell does have something happen to him where he can't be in office any longer. Well, then it'll be left up to it. My guess right now, unless McConnell cut a deal with Beshear, which would explain the lackluster monetary support from the McConnell camp for Cameron, not to mention why his campaign staffers that he lent to Cameron were so awful. He definitely, certainly, probably doesn't appear he gave him the A team. But anyways, that could mean that either A, cut a deal with Beshear and he'll step down and his handpicked replacement will go in, or two, in 2026, well, he won't run again. At least that's what you'd expect, though Mitch McConnell is the kind of person that loves power. He's the kind of person that, for all we know, would stay in power for as long as he could. And I wouldn't be necessarily shocked. I'd be slightly surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked to see McConnell actually run for re-election in 2026, especially if the Republicans in the Senate are the majority. And if he can be majority leader again, because, well, it's hard for those types of people like McConnell, to let go of power. But if he decides to not run again, who will replace him? Well, there's been some speculations. We've seen some people coming out of the woodwork, starting to become relevant again, trying to, and everything else. One name that it appears is getting quite the nod from the Republican Party establishment is Andy Barr, congressman from the 6th Congressional District. Also, obviously, a lot of people have floated around Comer as an option. And a lot of people mentioned, well, we could see Daniel Cameron running for that Senate seat. I don't know if Daniel Cameron does or doesn't. I don't know if he waits till 2027, that next year, to go ahead and run for governor again. Obviously, he had the option to stay as Attorney General for 4 years. And then while Attorney General, run for the Senate. You would think if his ultimate goal was to run for the Senate, if that was his goal, now goals change, he could address himself, but if that was his goal, he would have stayed as Attorney General, won re-election, and then ran for Senate in 2026 while being a sitting member of elected government. But now he's out, and he took that chance, and he knew he was taking a chance. So I don't know if Cameron runs for Senate or not. I don't know if he's interested in it, really. Things can change. To me, it doesn't appear he is. So you'll probably see Andy Barr run. You may see Comer run. You'll probably see Kelly Craft run for that position. Who knows everything you'll see there. But that's if Cameron even gets up. Because for all we know, as I said, Cameron may just hang on because, man, he sure does love that power. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. on WZXI and at 1 p.m. everywhere else. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you